Hey, welcome back to the channel. We are about to wrap up our conversation of Things Fall Apart by Chinua Achebe. It's been a nice run. I'm always a little concerned about these video runs. There's so much that can be said about the books, and I always feel like I'm giving them short shrift somehow. But it is what it is, I guess. If I really wanted to go into whole deep dives, I'd go get my master's degree, and it's not happening anytime soon. But kind of my goal for all of these is to introduce you to the books that I really love and to explain why. And there we go. And Things Fall Apart is definitely one of the books I love. So, as we wrap up, one of the questions I always have whenever I wrap up one of these series is, why this book? Why should this book be read? Why should it be taught? Why do I think it survived as long as it did? Many books were published in the late 1950s. This one lived. Why was that? And so that's kind of some of the questions that I want to explore today as we wrap things up. I'll kind of take this from the perspective of an English teacher. I think I mentioned I've taught this a few times. This was, I think, in the first lit class that I taught. I taught this book, and I do keep coming back to it. I think in my school we've actually moved this book down to our junior high. Because as our students get better, year on year, we kind of take some books and we readjust the level of them. And I think we're moving it down to junior high now, which is even better, frankly, in my opinion. It means I don't get to teach it anymore because I don't teach junior high, but that's okay. So why should we be teaching this book? I think there's a few reasons. As I said, for one, is that a lot of our students, and I think a lot of students who go to school in the United States and in Europe and England and Australia, a lot of students don't really get too much exposure to African literature because I suspect there is still this lingering belief that Africa is this sort of inherently dark and savage place. And that is not in any way, shape, or form true. There is great literature that's coming out of Africa, that came out of Africa, and this book kind of represents that wave of mid-century authors who kind of said, you know what, we have the ability to publish our own stories now, we have the ability to speak of our own world. We're not relying on other people to speak it for us, right? They're not relying on some American anthropology student to come and write a book, or some British novelist to take a 2-week safari in Africa and write the next great African novel. They're writing their own stories. And I think the more kids can read stories that are from outside of their own culture, the better they're going to be. And I know there are some people who kind of look at these ideas and say, well, that doesn't speak to me. It's not my story. Why should I read it? And my response is, because it's not yours, you will never be able to experience the life that is demonstrated in this book or in countless other books. The whole point of reading is that you get to experience other lives and other cultures and other ways of being, and that enriches you, and that enriches all of us. And so to expose our students to books like this, and to books from these sort of historically underrepresented sources of literary brilliance, I think is one of the best things that we can do, because a student can read this and they can go, I did not know any of this stuff. What else don't I know about the world? What else have you been hiding from me? So I think this is a great book to teach to students for that reason primarily, right? It exposes them to something really brand new. I think it's a great book to teach, as I mentioned in the book in the bit about gender roles and Okonkwo. I think it's a great book to teach for boys. If you have a class that is very boy heavy, this is a really good book, because you can get into those discussions of what manliness and what it means to be masculine and what manhood means. And you can look at it as a sort of from a distance. And some of them, I think I brought up Andrew Tate as a touchstone on this. Some of them may have watched his videos and may really like him. I have students who like him. And so you're not going to tread on what they like, because especially with young people, once you start to take apart the things they like, they take it real personally, and you don't want to do that. But you can still point to Okonkwo and you can say, okay, what are the flaws in his character? What is it that made him so hard to deal with? And what is it that made him fail? And if you're doing it right, you can kind of point to, especially for boys, the behaviors that they want to start to avoid as they grow up and as they grow older. So I think it's really good that way. And it's a really good story. It is very, to see the rise and fall of Okonkwo, to see him kind of make these decisions which in the moment seem like just bad decisions, but as you move on, his end seems more and more inevitable. Like all of these bad decisions are piling up. It is a story that is a story structure that's very familiar to us. I think Achebe very, very consciously was not following maybe sort of native Igbo traditional storytelling. I can't really say for sure because I don't know a whole lot or anything about traditional Igbo storytelling, but Achebe definitely looked at English literature. He's a well-educated man, Chinua Achebe was, by the way. He didn't just pop up somewhere and write a book. Very well-educated man, and he looked at the stories that were familiar that people knew, and he said, all right, I'm going to build my story around that. So it is a good story. It's a good read. I think it has a lot to teach us. And I think one of the reasons that it has stood the test of time is exactly for that, because it is all of that together. And it is, as I said, one of those kind of leading books to come out of the kind of the post-colonial, anti-colonial literary tradition of Africa. And there have been so many more books that come out of Africa. I do try to find, when I'm putting together a book curriculum, if I can, I'll try to find books that are from African writers. I don't always succeed because sometimes I want to build a curriculum in a specific way. I don't know the right books to put in. But whenever I get a chance, I try to do that because, like I said, I think there's a lot going on in the various parts of Africa. I think it would be great to look at, to do like an African literature survey and see sort of what the literature of Sub-Saharan Africa versus West Africa versus East Africa versus South Africa and Central. There are so many different writers coming from such various traditions that, you could do an entire YouTube channel that is just African literature. And it would be amazing and it would be great and people would learn so much. I don't feel qualified to do that for a lot of reasons. But if you are qualified to do that and you're looking to do a YouTube channel, I think that's a really good idea. Tell them I sent you. So it is a real good book. I think you should read it if you haven't read it already. I'm sorry I've given so much away, but that's kind of how this whole thing works. Like, I can't be real coy about spoilers and do any kind of real significant analysis. So, oh well. But yeah, if you've read the book and you have some thoughts about it, things that you would like to share, I would love to hear from you. If you have any suggestions in terms of, that this is a book that I really like. If you have any suggestions about other books from African writers that you would like me to read, I would love to know. I do know that Achebe has published, I think there's 2 more books that come after this, and I haven't read them yet, and I don't know why exactly. I think I may be succumbing to fear, much like Okonkwo, that I'm afraid they'll not be as good, or that by reading them, I'll somehow then go back to Things Fall Apart and I won't like it as much anymore. I don't know. I don't know what it is. I'm making decisions out of fear. Ooh, you win this time, Chinua Achebe. But anyway, if you have any suggestions or thoughts or ideas, let me know down in the comments. I really appreciate you sticking around for all of this. What's our next book? As of this recording, I have no idea. We'll figure it out together. So, thank you very much, and I will see you next time.